This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Who's got it better than us?
Nobody.
You got a date with justice.
Hello, everybody. This is your host, Brandon Justice. Welcome to the Justice Report on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Heading into Hate Week, Michigan versus Michigan State. A lot of excitement was had earlier in the season. This game, obviously, a little bit less on the excitement level as we head into it, but still, it's a Michigan State game. Kind of feels a little bit like an 03, 04, 05 Michigan State game rather than a 2010, 2011 one, which is good for Michigan fans, and it's really bad for Michigan State fans. Nonetheless, it's a rivalry. The number one thing that I hear, or I think of when I hear rivalry, is bring out the best in both teams. Both teams kind of bring their A game. No matter how bad you've performed, in prior games, there's still that sense of urgency to win that one game. And I had Chris Howard, and I'd spoke with him yesterday, and he kind of said this quote that I kept with me going into this game, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. It's this game has a life of its own. That's what he said. He said it's a 0-0, two teams 0-0. There's no game before this. There's no game after this. It's its own schedule. The game has its own life. Is the way he put it. He had some other words too, such as not enjoying Michigan State, but he said it. The game has a life of its own, and he said he recalls losing his freshman year and then rolling over in the next 3 years. It just has a life of its own. That's the best way to put it, I think, especially from a player standpoint. And he said no matter how good Michigan was going into the game or how good Michigan State was, vice versa, whatever it may be, how better the one was than the other, it had a life of its own. And I think that in recent years, but discounting last year, you saw this game get dominated by Michigan State, both on the win-loss column and honestly in the score. Besides the Tate Forcier overtime game, other than that, pretty much blew them out every year. I think they had negative rushing yards in 2013 when Devin Gardner was at quarterback. But now the switch is flipped. You got a 2-5 Michigan State team. You got a 7-0 Michigan team. And I'm just going to sneak in this hot take. This is the best Michigan team I've seen. 7 games through, this is the best Michigan team I've probably seen in a long time. Now, if they can keep this up, we're in the second half here. They got lucky. They had the bye week at the 6th week. Couldn't get much better than that, right in the halfway point. Tough for Michigan State. A lot of people are forgetting about this. They had their bye week the second week of the season, so you got to grind out 11 straight weeks of football, whereas Michigan got to split it right in the middle. So as far as kickoff goes, you're going to have a 12. Nothing better than a 12 o'clock kickoff from a writer's standpoint. Wake up, work, about 5 hours later, you're done. 3:30 games, we got out stadium about what, 11 o'clock maybe? Get home about midnight. All of a sudden, you missed all the 8 and 9 o'clock games. I just got to catch the Ohio State-Penn State game last week. I just saw the blocked field goal. That was what I saw. Immediately fell asleep right after. But a lot of excitement in Ann Arbor, but they head up to East Lansing. There's a lot of narratives in this game. A lot of narratives. Michigan's first true road test. It doesn't come until 7 weeks in, unless you count Rutgers, which Wilton Speight called basically a home game. So it's your first real road game. Michigan State is due to play good. It's not like this team has a first-year head coach. They have one of the best head coaches in football, and that's what Jim Harbaugh said. Was that D'Antonio has done one of the best jobs ever, college football, which, transforming this Michigan State program. So this team is well coached. There's talent. Malik McDowell is one of the best, defensive linemen in the country. I can't really say much else. LJ Scott's good sometimes. Quarterback's a huge question. The offensive line is terrible. Donnie Corley's good, though, while we're here. Donnie Corley's good. I also want to give a shout out to my friend Brandon Sowers, who plays for Michigan State. He's like a fifth-string receiver, but nonetheless, hopefully he gets in there. I know he had a punt return earlier in the year. Haven't seen him in a couple of years, but friend from high school. Good luck out there, Sowers. And then on Michigan's side of the ball, a little bit different. Probably the best defense in the country. It is the best defense in the country. It's pretty much safe to say that now. They lead every important statistical category. Number 1 total defense, number 1 sacks, number 1 in third down conversions, yards per game, points allowed. It's pretty ridiculous right now, if you're a Michigan fan, to look at the numbers of this defense. Don Brown's system it's been as polished as it gets. You watch Jabril Peppers and Mike McCray and Ben Gideon and 5 D linemen on the line, and a quarterback doesn't know if they're going to blitz, whatever happens. 3 guys go, 2 guys drop back. It's one of the craziest schemes you're going to see. all kinds of disguises. Someone's blitzing every single play. I think they rush 5 almost every single play as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how this Michigan State team reacts to that, because a lot of people are forgetting that D'Antonio has never seen this before. He's never faced a Don Brown team as far as I know. He's never faced this kind of defense before. While it's a disadvantage for Michigan because they've had 3 defensive coordinators in 3 years, it's an advantage for them at the same time because they bring, the third different look to this Michigan State offense. And they have the freshman at quarterback and Lewerke, however you say it. And, the offensive line is young. The receivers are really young. Best player on defense, McDowell, after that, who Demetrius Cox is overrated. He can't defend a pass to save his life, but hell of a tackler. Give him that. It's just a very overmatched matchup this season. But as I started off the show saying, it's a rivalry. So I do think Michigan State brings their A game for at least a quarter. They're due. They've lost 5 in a row. D'Antonio hasn't lost 2 in a row in, I think, 3 years before it's this year at Michigan State. So Michigan State's due for a halfway decent game. I think this Spartan team probably isn't going to make a bowl because they're going to have to win at least 2 more games. They can't beat Ohio State. And I'll get to whether they beat Michigan or not towards the end of the show. Maybe they'll get into 5-7 if they have a good enough GPA, but that's about their only hope for a bowl game this season. As far as Michigan goes, and I wanted to bring up these numbers for the Michigan-Illinois game because I do this every episode. Last week's game, got to go over the numbers, especially with this Michigan team this season. The numbers have been so absurd is a good word if you're on the defensive side of the ball. Juggernaut. I want to start off with this number. 41-18. Not the score. It's time of possession. Michigan had the ball for 41 minutes, 23 seconds. Illinois only had it for 18 minutes and 37 seconds. That's a lot to a little. That's 87 plays of 38. So Michigan is almost to the century mark in plays, over 87. While Illinois couldn't even get close to 50. They're actually 12 below 50. That's a classic Michigan offense. They have speed, but they're not going to hurry up the offense. There isn't going to be too much huddle. They're going to control the pace of the game. That's how they've always won games. When they're a good team, that's how they've won their games, controlling the pace of the game. That's exactly what they did on Saturday. That's exactly what they've done all season. I don't think they've ever been on the other side of time of possession. So another stat, though, and it continues. This continues to be dominant. Third down conversions, they just don't happen for teams that play Michigan. Illinois went 2 of 10, so 20%. I think that puts Michigan at 21% on the season. And in another game where Illinois didn't have over 100 rushing yards, and they didn't have over 100 passing yards. They had one play from Keyshawn Vaughn that went for 45 yards. He only rushed for 43 yards that game. So you take away that big play, he finishes with -2 yards. And Illinois' staggering, 172 yards, then turns to, even lower. So you take that one big play away, and Keyshawn Vaughn actually rushes for -2 yards instead of the 43. And then you look at Foster, another running back for Illinois, who had 45 yards. He had one play go for 17. The rest went for 4-2, 4-4, 7-2-5. It's a dominant defense. It's a very good defense right now for Michigan. And then you got to take into consideration the big pass that got the touchdown. Now, they had one touchdown. They obviously went for 2, and they got the 8. So let's look at the passing yards here from Jeff George Jr. 95 yards, 4 of 15, which is ridiculous. He had one play go for 43 yards. So again, 2 plays that went for 40-plus yards. You take those off the board, another team with under 100 yards in Michigan. If you take 2 plays away, Illinois had 2 big plays. And that's what you're getting in this defense. You're getting a defense that is very risk-reward. It's very much so that they're going to blitz every single play, and they're willing to give up that one big player, those 2 big plays, and walk out giving up anywhere from 7 to 14 points in order to stop them on every other down. So yeah, Illinois had the 8. It all came from 2 big plays. Well, one of the big plays, they ended up not getting anything out of it, but the other big play was the touchdown. So if Michigan plays conservative the rest of the game, then you're questioning, does Illinois get more yards? Yeah, probably. If they don't play as aggressive as they do the entire game, then maybe they don't stop them in every single down. You got to trade in that one touchdown for the other 35 plays of dominance. Michigan dominated for 34 plays. There's 4 plays of Illinois' 38 that wasn't dominated by Michigan. They only had 4 plays go for over 5 yards. And then 2 of those 4 went for 40-plus. That's the same thing with this Michigan State team. That's why I think Michigan State's going to score, because Shelton's been so speedy in the open field that he'll probably break one off. But I think that's all that's going to happen. Michigan legitimately could sack this team 12 times because Northwestern penetrated that offensive line. And Northwestern is awful. They're terrible this season. I mean, they lost to Illinois State, dominated by Western. Not to say Western isn't a good team. They certainly don't think they're top 15 by any means, though. But we'll talk about that another day. So I want to bring on a special guest today. You might know him. His name's Doc. You might have heard him a couple times on here. So he hosts the Doc and Jock Show. This is his baby. This is his network. He runs the show. He's on with us. He likes to consider himself Sparty. So I want to bring this on for the Michigan State edition. Doc, how are you?
Bada boom! Realest guys in the room! How you doing?
All right, Brandon. I've listened to you now for 5 full episodes and now into the 6th, and now I got to take you to task. All right, you're giving us all the stats, all the information regarding why Michigan's going to play well, but I'm here as a Sparty fan, diehard, and like everybody else, I do believe Michigan, if they play well, is going to come to East Lansing and probably do some things. But I have been reading, as you've been talking about the stats and how great Michigan is, yada, yada, yada. And I have kind of started to make an argument as to why Michigan is going to struggle, at least in the first half, maybe going into the third quarter, because there is game film on one performance versus a team that did kind of contain Michigan until the end. And that team would be Wisconsin. The final score was 14-7, and Michigan scored a touchdown late. Wisconsin was able to kind of stall out drives for Michigan, and there's a blueprint of what to do. Is Michigan State definitely needs to have a massive, massive performance from that defensive line, from the secondary. Every single player on that team has to step it up and play at a level that they haven't played probably the entire year. But who's to say that in a rivalry game, they all don't step up and do some things? So the first thing I'll talk to you about is I do believe that early on, Michigan State is going to try to run the hell out of the football. And whether, that's going to be fruitful or not, that's going to be dependent on this offensive line to create some holes and to let these running backs keep the ball and move the chains. What's the best defense to keep Michigan off the field off the football field from steamrolling us? Keep possession of the football. And then, Brandon, I'm going to tell you this. If the defense can bend all the way, but not break, maybe force Michigan into a lot more field goal attempts, that will give us at least an opportunity to keep the game close. And then a lot of people are looking in the range of maybe 31-10. But if Michigan State's defense can kind of show up, if the offense can contain Jabril Peppers and can make sure that, all the stars on Michigan's defense can, maybe have just a slight setback and not perform as well as everybody thinks, then maybe, just maybe, you could make this a fourth quarter game, and then the D'Antonio magic will happen, and everybody in the world will be shocked if Michigan State pulls it off. That's my case. I think that if just the simple basics of this rivalry, run the football, make a couple key plays, and don't let Michigan steamroll you early on. Because remember, it's going to be relatively simple. If in the first half Michigan gets out to a 14-0 lead, 17-0, forget about it. Lewerke will not come back and will not do some things. If, there is this rallying cry of us versus the world, if it's, everybody looks within themselves and says, okay, one play at a time, this could be a ball game. A lot of people are starting to turn and say maybe, just maybe, it might not be the route that everybody says it is, and there's some film out there of how to kind of contain Michigan's offense. And maybe the field goal game doesn't shape out as it usually has.
Here's my response to that, because it's good. It's good. Make good points. And I applaud you for that, because it's difficult to make good points out of this matchup.
Very.
Here's the last time Michigan State was able to put up more than 20 points. It was against Northwestern. They put up 40. They lost 54-40. And you brought up possession. They got outpossessed 35 minutes to 24. With as many big plays that Northwestern had, they still got outpossessed by 11 minutes. They gave up 490 yards to a team who put up under 200 against Illinois State. How do you respond to that?
Obviously, Brandon, week in, week out, the defense hasn't progressed. But I'm going to start, and I'm going to look at the marquee game that was on national television, Game 2. And Michigan State played Notre Dame. And obviously, Notre Dame
was terrible.
They're terrible. Obviously, it's at the time, though, in week 2, they weren't viewed as terrible. And Michigan State went in there on the road, and they were able to do some things. Now, but since then, I think the blueprint kind of was shown when Notre Dame came back in the second half. And since that performance, versus Notre Dame in the second half, the defense has just played terribly. But if they can dial up the intensity, if they can make some plays, then you start to notice, okay, maybe if Michigan State scores first, gets an early touchdown. Maybe Spate has a couple plays that don't exactly go correctly. You force a turnover, maybe a fumble here and there, and you keep the game close. The game could be around 10-3, 10-7 with a solid run game. If you keep the ball, if Lewerke can just hand the ball off to the myriad of running backs and they can do some things, then maybe, just maybe, you keep it conservative. You then control the line of scrimmage, and you control the time of possession, which will allow you to keep Michigan off the field. If they can do that, if they can run the football effectively, and remember, this game's in East Lansing, so there may be more, as reports are, a lot more Michigan fans in the attendance there, but if the vast majority of loud, ruckus Spartan fans can get into the game and the Spartans keep it close early, might be a close game, and it might be something where Michigan will finally have to play a team and do some things offensively versus a team that plays well on defense. Make Spate beat you will be probably the onus on Michigan State's defense. Make Spate throw the football all around and see what happens. But Michigan has talent. I'm not going to sit here and knock Michigan. They have talent. What I'm talking about is if everything works out perfectly and the scheme is right and the performances shake out to what we were expecting, then maybe, just maybe, we can stay in this game. Make Spate beat you. Maybe he'll throw a couple picks our way this go around.
Here's the thing. And
a lot of maybes, but it could happen. Because remember, there have been games where Michigan has come in and they thought that they were going to come and steamroll Michigan State, and there have been some upsets. You can't be totally... I mean, how shocked would you be if State were to defeat Michigan? How shocked would you be? Would it devastate you? Would you be like totally, jaw-dropping? Or would you say, you know what? Still another year, only second year in Jim Harbaugh's, obviously the loss would be devastating coming in undefeated, but still Harbaugh's second year.
I would be jaw-dropped.
You'd be surprised.
Because of the separation of these two teams coming in on paper and from the eye test. Michigan doesn't have a fluke win right now. They really don't. If Notre Dame had half the play, half a mindset and how to play call and time management, remember how bad that time management was at the end of the game? If Brian Kelly had half a brain at the end of that game, Michigan State could be 1-6.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable, right? There's some kind of magic that surrounds D'Antonio in these kind of games. Maybe
not at 2-5 though.
Maybe he comes out with a 2-quarterback system and he starts with O'Connor, brings in Lewerke, and it's just something where some things just have. We need luck on our
Rutgers
side.
Tried that too.
Yeah, we need luck on our side. Obviously, do you think Harbaugh is going to run it up? If they're up 4 or 5 touchdowns, go for 2, just make it a total bloodbath. You think he'll actually do that?
Absolutely.
He'll do it, huh?
Here's the thing. When you were kind of talking about it a couple of minutes ago, and you said, if they can do this, if they can do that, they haven't yet.
We're still waiting to see it, right?
So they have to do that. There's a team who has had the best defense all year, who has consistently shut down. Corey Clement, who put up, I think, 200 yards rushing on Ohio State, had 66 on Michigan's defense. It was in Ann Arbor, yeah, but 140 yards less. I mean, there's a team in Ann Arbor who has consistently done the things they need to do that Michigan State hasn't done. Michigan State's prolific win is over another 2-5 team in a game that they almost lost against a team who lost to Duke. Duke is what, 3-4 right now? I think they're along the same roads as these two teams. So what's your prolific win at home?
Furman. Joy. Now, none of the Big Ten. No wins in the Big Ten. Unbelievable, huh? No, this is a down year. How surprised are you when you've seen, the decline of Michigan State? Did you think that, obviously, most people were picking them to be like 9-3, 10-2, with losses probably, or a chance to lose versus Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan. A lot of people had them going down year. This is a surprising year, though, to lose 5 straight. It's been one of those things where it's happened fast, and you really start looking at the 2013 recruiting class. It hasn't lived up to fruition, and that senior leadership class hasn't done a lot of good things so far.
Here's the thing. I was looking at the schedule before the season because I have to. It's like my job to do that. And I was trying to evaluate, all right, Michigan goes into East Lansing. And I want to really point out my friends that go to Michigan State. We're talking Will TD and Aaron Arturi and a couple of other guys that I won't name. I want to name those two. They had two different perspectives. Now, Will told me specifically that, and I want to name them because they'll feel cool, but they also had, this is actually like a good topic. Will thought Michigan State, he said, I don't remember his words, he goes, listen, the difference of that game against Michigan is East Lansing. That's why I think Michigan State's going to win. He said that before week 1. He said that after Furman, and he said it after Notre Dame. Aaron told me before the season, Michigan's going to steamroll us. He said they're terrible. That's exactly what he said. I was like, really? He goes, I don't know why everybody here is so hyped up. He goes, they might lose to Furman. And they almost did. And then when they beat Notre Dame, he was like, they're still awful. And then they lost 5 in a row. And he texted me, I think earlier this week, and he goes, I haven't watched one game.
Yeah, it's been tough to watch. I mean, I'll be honest, when you make your own schedule at work, it makes it a great distraction to come to work instead of looking at what Michigan State's been doing, because the differences in the offenses is just staggering. Michigan is lighting it up on the scoreboard week in, week out. Their offense looks fresh, innovative. They're pounding the football. They're throwing the football to the great receivers that they have. Now, meanwhile, on my side, Michigan State, we're all pissed off at what the hell Dave Warner's doing, because if we see another toss sweep on 3rd down, we're all getting pissed off. Like, seriously? Run something unique. Do something different. A lot of people are really upset with the predictable nature of Michigan State's offense. They haven't evolved. And I'm personally thinking that D'Antonio made a huge mistake in terms of taking out Tyler O'Connor. It's evident Lewerke has talent. You know that in the future, Messiah DeWeaver is probably going to do some things, probably is the heir apparent to be the quarterback. But when things go bad, a lot of it I don't think had to do with Tyler O'Connor. You've seen when he's been taken out of the game and brought back in later, or when he started games, he's done relatively okay. It's not his fault that he's lost a lot of talent on the offensive line. It's not his fault that some of the receivers aren't making key plays at the right times. It's not his fault that the defense is atrocious. Yet he's being made to be the scapegoat. And when he's gone in there, he's done some things. So I thought when the heat got the hottest, I think D'Antonio made the biggest mistake in terms of going to Lewerke. And a 2-quarterback system rarely works, and it rarely works at Michigan State. So I thought it would have been incumbent upon D'Antonio to take a leadership role, keep Tyler O'Connor, and if you're going to lose, at least be a little bit more competitive in these games. To go on the road to lose to Maryland is really embarrassing. But, the good thing is that Tyler O'Connor has experience playing tough games on the road. If you remember last year, winning versus Ohio State. Now, that loss looks really ridiculous at this point in time when you look at it, when all they had to do was really utilize Ezekiel Elliott much more. I don't know why they took him out of the game plan, but Tyler O'Connor has a key win on his resume, and so I think that if you were to let him progress and let him stay on the field, he might do some things. And I know it's a game-time decision as we speak right now. I'm hoping that it's Tyler O'Connor, because that connection potentially with Josiah Price and Donnie Corley could do some things if they can win their matchups versus Michigan secondary. Donnie Corley could be a factor.
Yeah. And
he could be a factor. He's got talent.
But here's the thing. You ever heard of Jordan Lewis?
I've heard of him.
You want to know the QB rating when throwing at Jordan Lewis this season?
Ooh, tell me. Do tell.
0.0.
Well, there you go.
There's been one completion, and it was a tackle for loss. And then combined between he and Channing Stribling, I think it was 1.05. So we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're gonna talk more, probably bicker a little bit more, see what we can come up with. See if I'm sure the doc will be on his phone during trying to figure out how the hell is Michigan gonna.
It's a lot of ifs.
Come out flat. How could
it's a lot of ifs and buts. But hey, you never know in a game of football. One play, and I'm hoping it's the second or third play. Maybe Jabril Peppers comes to the line, or maybe it's the first punt and he gets hurt and he's out for the game. Maybe, just maybe, there's some luck factor that's going to come Michigan State's way.
Well, let's hope he's okay. Let's hope he's okay in the end, right?
No, I'm a Sparty. I hope that he kind of tears his ankle. I don't care. I hope he rolls his ankle. I hope that he's incapacitated and tries to come back versus Ohio State and then rolls it again in that game.
We're going to go to break. You're listening to the Justice Report on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
O'Neal's been terrific with the rugby-style punts.
Yeah, terrific.
But you have to be careful here. Make sure the snaps.
Set the scene, Brandon. Where were you last year when this happened?
I was in a living room.
How shocked were you this happened?
I was shocked. I'll say that. I was shocked.
This is the great part right here.
Tell your punter to one step it. Don't take your.
It's probably the greatest play in college football history.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State. Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game.
Oh, That's just the greatest bumper of all time. Aren't I the best? That's just probably one of the greatest moments probably watching sports, because I was in a pro Michigan house, and it was just me and 5 other people that were kind of excited that Michigan was going to win, and I was kind of like, okay, it looks like this is done. And they were pretty calm. And then when that play happened, I jumped up and was like almost spun like a top that play happened. And really, probably, I would say that I know a lot of Michigan fans were devastated that play happened. I think that play probably is really good for the Michigan program, because that might fuel the fire for potentially a long run this year, maybe getting to the college football playoff.
That's their little brother. That's their little brother comment.
Yeah, I mean, literally,
that's their moment.
They lost the game when they had it all wrapped up. All Michigan had to do was grab the punt, kick it away, and they walk away with the victory in Jim Harbaugh's first season. But given the fact that Michigan State hasn't done much with it this year, I do believe that I think Michigan this year might use it as a rallying cry to really, really perform well. And like I said, I'm talking about Michigan State with a lot of ifs and buts regarding their performance. They got to do a lot of things, like you said, that we haven't seen. Michigan's done well. You really also got to look at the level of competition that they've played. Obviously, beating Wisconsin was a solid top 10 win, or that was a solid top 25 win. First win that Michigan's had versus a top quality opponent in a significant amount of time. Michigan's done well with the schedule that's put in front of them. They don't, they can't control, the players can't control the schedule that was made, but Michigan State's going to be a test. I do believe it will be a test of what they can do. And then if Michigan goes on, are you starting to feel more confident now that Ohio State has lost and put a loss up there versus Penn State?
No, because Ohio State never loses twice.
That's tough, right? I think that's a bad thing that Ohio State lost, because they know now they got to run the table.
Yeah.
But you're not confident, though, that
I'm not saying I'm not confident.
Ohio State's offense isn't looking that good.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm not confident. I'm just saying that team rarely loses twice. Urban Meyer rarely loses twice.
Yep.
And in today's day and age, where Urban Meyer can lose that game and still go to the title, he's definitely going to try and not lose twice. But again, Jim Harbaugh, since that Michigan State game last year, and I want to point this out because, by the way, I haven't heard that call since it happened. I'm kidding. I hear it every single day. It's flipped to ESPN or Big Ten Network. It's on every single montage you'll ever see about college football. But nonetheless, since that game, since the trouble with the snap, Michigan's 13-1. I think they've blown out every team they've played since then. Think about it. When's the, besides the Indiana-Minnesota games that were obviously really close, take a look.
And that one loss to Ohio State, that was pretty embarrassing.
Oh, yeah. I'm just counting the one in the 13-1. So you take out the Ohio State game and the Indiana-Minnesota game. Since last year, since January 1st, Florida, the 41-7 blowout of Florida, Michigan hasn't won a game by less than, how much did they beat Colorado, by 17? Since that game, the 41-7 win, Michigan's won by more than 14 against every opponent. They're imposing their will. That's what Chris Howard said. He said, and that's what you have to do.
What's the talk been? Are you guys feeling like the momentum is going toward a berth in the college football playoff, winning the Big Ten? Is it realistic to make that goal now for 2016?
Oh my God, it has to be. It has to be your goal. When you're 7-0, you have the number 1 defense, you have the number 3 scoring offense. You're that balanced right now. You're that, you have that many weapons. Think about it. Amar Darboh has been the best receiver in the Big Ten, in my opinion. I mean, there might be a better one that I haven't seen in a lower level team, but among the powers of Michigan, Ohio State, and Nebraska, who probably has one that I can't think of his name, Westerkamp, I think his name is. He's pretty good. But Amar Darboh, J.U. Chesson, Jake Butt, Tyron Wheatley hit the scene last week. Devin Asiasi hit the scene a couple of weeks ago. You get the slot guys like Grant Perry, who's back this week. He was out for disciplinary issues last week. Eddie McDoom, you know who that is? I mean, he's pretty good too. So Michigan has so many weapons to look at on offense. And who does Michigan State go to on offense? L.J. Scott, R.J. Shelton, or whatever his name is. Donnie Corley. And Corley's a true freshman. He hasn't played in a big game. He had Notre Dame on the road, but he hasn't faced Michigan. He hasn't gone up against a Jordan Lewis yet. Name one cover corner in the country who is better than Lewis. No one. B, name someone that is a cover corner that's gone one-on-one with Corley this season that's even remotely close to Lewis. There hasn't been one. Now, it's not officially been said that Lewis is going to be covering Corley, but they know each other. They've known each other for a long time. I think that Lewis said back early on Monday after the press conference, the weekly press conference, that he's known Corley since he was in Little League. So you think Lewis knows how he plays? You think Corley knows how Lewis plays? Yeah. It's going to be a fun matchup. It's going to be, but I think Lewis dominates that. They're never going to throw towards Lewis. Lewis didn't get thrown at last week, and I don't think one time he got thrown at last week. D'Antonio's a good coach. I think he's really going to be like, okay, who's their best guy? Let me throw at him. No. But sometimes does D'Antonio get overconfident? Yes, often. So will he take a challenge and try and throw at Lewis? Probably. Will he get picked off? Probably. I mean, he's pretty good. I don't think Corley does anything as long as Lewis is on him. And then Stribling, the number 2 guy, had what Lewis called the best game from a Michigan corner in a long time against Wisconsin. 2 picks. I don't think he allowed a catch. And then your number 3 guy is Brandon Watson, a tiny, scrappy, slot corner who can keep up with Shelton. But the story of this game is the defensive line and the offensive line. There's no way that McDowell is not going to get double teamed. And when you free up the other guys, none of them are good enough. At this point, at least that's what I've seen from Michigan State's film. McDowell, when double teamed, can't get past the double team. He maybe through some time, but he can't penetrate the offensive line immediately. And then you look at the rest of that Michigan State defensive line. Who's going to get past that? I don't think they're going to give Spate trouble. I don't think Demetrius Cox is good enough to cover Darbo, Chesson, or anybody there. Riley Bullough might be out by the second play with the way he's playing right now so aggressively. And then I arrow over to the defensive line from Michigan. Taco Charlton, and I think I said this last week, but Taco Charlton has probably as good of a spin move in college football that you're going to see. There's one defensive lineman one defensive end, I should say, that I'm confident is better than Charlton, and that's Myles Garrett at A&M, and probably Allen from Alabama. Those 2 guys are probably better. But Charlton's right there. I mean, his spin move is as good as it gets, and he's going to give trouble the entire game. And then you think about Maurice Hurst, who has been the most improved player, I think, in the defensive side of the ball, along with Stribling. And then, of course, you can't forget about Ryan Glasgow, probably the best run. I don't think one team has had a run play up the middle against Michigan for more than 5 to 10 or more than 5 yards. I really don't think it's happened all season. I haven't seen it.
Do you think Michigan State will punt the ball at all in the direction of Jabril Peppers?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But here's another thing though. A few weeks ago, I think this was after week 1. It's been a long time since I've heard this, but it was when Jordan Lewis came back. So this was like week 4. Harbaugh said, or some coach said, might have been Partridge. It was Partridge, Chris Partridge, linebackers and special teams, said that you might see Lewis and Peppers in the punt return at the same time to avoid letting them kick away from them. Because I don't know if you've seen Lewis on kick returns, but he's pretty good too. He's a lightning bolt, and he said in the offseason before he got hurt that he wanted to play offense too. And he went to the 7-on-7, so he's really good on offense. So you think about it, Michigan just has more weapons on all levels. This game on paper should be, like fifth, as Graham Couch at the LSJ said, it should be 52-10. Honestly, that's a fine prediction. That's not bold whatsoever on paper, but it's a rivalry, and you think these teams are going to bring out the best in each other. But as we were talking about before the show, there's really no confidence in Michigan State. They haven't shown any. This is a game that they get so excited for. They get so pumped about, no matter their record. Michigan State is they want to beat Michigan. All the players tweeted out 100 days before they get locked in our stadium. I think a couple of them went back and deleted it now, is what I've heard. But they all tweeted out, 100 days till them boys get locked back in our stadium. They might be thinking about unlocking the doors now and let them out, let them go away. Now they might want to lock them out of it instead of locking them in.
All right. Let me ask you this. For Michigan, who do you think is going to be the key performer? Who's going to be the guy with the best stats? Is it going to be Jabril Peppers?
It's going to be
Darbo
Peppers.
Or Chesson? I don't think so. I think Michigan State is well aware of who the best player on the field is, and that's Jabril Peppers. I think they will devise a scheme in order to kind of limit him. So I think that one of the best players is going to be one of these 3. It's going to be Chesson, Darbo, or Jake Butt. I think Jabril Peppers is going to be hyped up to try and maybe earn his way into New York for the Heisman talk. It's been talked about quite a bit. Jim Harbaugh wants Jabril Peppers to be in the conversation. So he's going to try to do some things, but I do believe Mark D'Antonio will at least scheme in order to avoid having Jabril be the best player.
Offensively. I think offensively, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking overall, Jabril Peppers could literally walk out with 12 tackles.
Okay, potentially.
Because he's going to spy Shelton wherever he goes.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's one of the only guys that can keep up with him. And every single time that he doesn't have to do that, he's going to blitz. And then on the punt return, if they kick towards him, then yeah, but here's the thing. I think you're right. I think you're 100% right that they're going to game plan to keep it away from him. Because when's the last time? Wherever Peppers is, the other teams go the opposite way. That's been the story of the game the past few weeks. But I I don't see that happening. Who do you have to go towards? If you're not going towards Peppers, you're going towards Ben Gideon, who leads the Big Ten in tackles, or Mike McRae, who is one of the best tackles for loss guy on the TFL guys in Michigan right now. So if I had to pick somebody, I mean, I think Peppers is as good as it gets. But if I had to pick somebody else who's going to have a big game, which I think you're right, I think they're going to game plan, especially on offense, to stay away from him. I still think he throws a touchdown because he's been setting back to pass a couple of times this season. I think he finally does it for this game, especially this game. But if I had to pick somebody else besides him, because I do sort of agree with you, then, you got to look at Wilton Speight. Look what Northwestern did to Michigan State. Thorson went 27 of 35, 281 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jackson had 188 yards on 34 carries for 2 touchdowns, and Carr had 11 receptions for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Yeah, Speight, and I said it last week, Speight came into his own against Illinois. And I remember saying on the show, I was like, Spate's going to have his big day against Illinois. Now, it wasn't like a 350 yards, 5 touchdowns day. It didn't need to be. He was pulled out after the third quarter anyways, like he has been all season. 16 to 23, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, a QBR 190. He was above 200 for the better part of that game. I think it was until, midway through the third quarter that he wasn't. I have to go with Speight. I think Speight has entered the level that the fans wanted. Now, he's nowhere, he's not John Navarre, he's not Chad Henne level right now where he's just going to toss after toss, because I don't think he has a Braylon Edwards. I don't think he has that kind of guy, or an Anthony Carter or anything like that. Although I think he has multiple guys who are close to that level with Chesson, Darbone. But nonetheless, I really do think that Speight is going to have that coming out party. I think he had it last week to an extent. No one's going to invest anything into it because it's Illinois. And again, they shouldn't invest into it with a 2-5 team, no matter the name of the team. But I really do think Speight is going to have that big game. I'm talking, 3 TDs, maybe 300 yards, 250 probably is where I think it'll be. And then you got that running back by committee. Karan Higdon, this is a defense that Karan Higdon can thrash. And it is one that Chris Evans can too, but I don't think Evans is going to play because of that concussion that he has. So, Karan Higdon probably has a big day. Speight has a big day on offense. Defensively, I think Taco Charlton has a huge day. And Jabril Peppers has a big day. And Jordan Lewis doesn't get a chance to because they're not going to throw at him. But that's, away from Peppers, those are the guys. Because I think Speight really...
Yeah. Are you a fan of The Walking Dead? You watch that show?
I've never watched it.
I've never watched a single episode, but a lot of people have talked about it, so I'm going to use this metaphor. It's going to be as painful when Michigan State ekes this one out, similar to the feeling that everyone's had when...
Are you saying they're going to win right now?
I'm saying that I'm telling you that the pain is going to be similar as to when Negan killed Glenn in the season premiere. And it's going to feel that much worse and cause that much of a shockwave across the landscape when Michigan State... handles, because everyone's expecting Michigan to do their business and win by 50. You got people in the media, and people in the media expecting that it's going to be a disastrous game for Michigan State. I'm saying that this game, the more we talk about it, I had the game going 31-10 Michigan, but the more I talk about it, the more hyped I get. I'm going to go down there and make a pregame speech. I'm going to tell everybody to rally, that this is the one game. I don't care if we lose the rest of the games on the season.
So that's where you're at now. That's where you're at now. Is that this season has become
psychological.
A one-game season.
A one-game, 60-minute season, one performance for it all. Because this game could really wreck Michigan's season. And what better way for Sparty to really, really ruin the party?
Yeah, but they can still go to the playoff with a one loss.
They could, but I still expect Ohio State to come back now and drill Michigan as well. I fully expect Ohio State in Columbus because you think Michigan is a nasty rivalry. Holy cow. Imagine Jim Harbaugh going to Columbus and winning at Ohio State. Oh my gosh, that place, nobody would walk out of there. That bus, that Mason Blue bus might need a police escort to get out of there. But I think that with Michigan State, when we talk about it too, there is a situation where Michigan's going to have to go out there and perform and execute all these things that everybody's talking about. And just with a couple, with that increased pressure, this is going to be something, something that everybody's going to be watching in the state of Michigan. The pressure is much different when you play Michigan State than when you go play Illinois, Indiana, the likes of the teams that Michigan has played already. So, and it's on the road. I'm thinking that the pressure might just get to, the crew over there that wears maize and blue, and they might struggle to effectively make those plays. Maybe that pass that was going to be caught by Chesson just maybe is 2 yards ahead of him, and the timing is off. maybe, just maybe, they try to run, and Michigan State's defensive line, led by Malik McDowell, makes some plays, causes a couple fumbles. So you're going to have to go out there and make plays. And don't be surprised if the game's tight early on. And don't be surprised at all if it's a very, very tight game in the fourth quarter. And it's going to come down to who makes those plays. The odds say that Michigan will end up making those plays because the talent is there. But I'm not discounting, and I'm not totally I'm not totally believing that Michigan State could not eke one out if it's a tight game.
Are we making our predictions now? I'm guessing that's what time it is.
No, I'm not making no predictions. I'm just saying that if Michigan State were to pull this one out, what would some of the reasons be? Because you're expecting...
Well, Michigan would have to play the complete opposite they played all season, and so would State.
Exactly. What would have to happen is a complete role reversal. Michigan's going to have to not execute, and Michigan State will have to. And that might just happen. There might be some factors that cause that to happen, and we'll hope and see on Saturday at noon. What are you going to be doing to watch the game?
Do we got a drum roll?
No.
Well, imagine a drum roll, because I'm going to start off with where I'm watching it, and then I'm going to go into what's going to happen. So imagine a drum roll, everyone. Well, first I'm going to tell you I'm just going to be sitting at my girlfriend's house watching it. And then secondly, the drum roll, imagining. All right, it should be over now. So, Michigan, number 2 in the country, 7-0, no fluke wins, no fluke games, all real wins, blowouts, besides Wisconsin, which really could have been 23-7 if their kicker used his leg properly in that game. Michigan State, 2-5, prolific win over another 2-5 team. Prolific home win over number 52 in the country in FCS, Furman. Michigan's going to have to come out playing the exact opposite way they've played all season. Michigan State is going to have to come out playing the exact opposite way they've played probably the whole season, actually, because they played pretty bad the first two anyways, especially defensively. So, my prediction. And here's the thing. I know Doc and I have gone at it all show. I do think this is a rivalry, and I do think rivalries bring out the best in both teams. And I do think that Michigan State isn't going to roll over, and they're not going to show up flat. I don't think that's a D'Antonio team. Well, I also don't think this team at all has been a D'Antonio team this season, but nonetheless, I think Michigan State shows up for like the first quarter, because this Michigan team is a lot better than even I thought it would be. I thought legitimately they had a chance to go to the playoff. But now it's almost as if they do the business like they have all season, they're going to have to make the playoff. They've been better than Ohio State. They really have. I mean, can they beat them head-to-head in Columbus? I don't know. We'll tackle that when we get there. But I'm saying that Michigan has been the Big Ten's best team. They have been the country's number 2 best team, because there's only one team that's been more impressive. It's Alabama. Michigan State has been awful. And I think they're due to play somewhat decent. But Michigan has played somewhat decent teams, and they've rolled them over. Colorado's a pretty good team. Penn State just beat Ohio State. Michigan beat Penn State 49-10. They beat Colorado by 17. Yeah, granted, they were at home, but nonetheless, they rolled these teams over. I don't think home field advantage gives you an extra 39 points. So here's the thing. Demetrius Cox on Michigan State's defense is overrated. He's not good. He's not going to be able to cover Chesson, Darbo, that combination. That's just not going to happen. Eddie McDoom could run a couple off in the sweep. Jabril Peppers is probably going to do some things on offense. But overall, it's Wilton Spate on offense. That just is an air raid. Ron Higdon has a big day, probably. I don't think the State defense can tackle Smith. Riley Bullough might get ejected on the first drive. Who cares? But this is the difference. There's no confidence in Michigan State's side right now. There really isn't. If you look at the interviews, if you look at the press conferences, nothing even close to what they've been before. It's hard to when you're 2-5, but you have to at least have some kind of confidence that you're going to bounce back, and they don't have it right now. Defensively, Michigan State might not get 100 yards. I mean, it's that bad for Michigan State's, matchup-wise. I mean, Shelton might crack off a big play, but honestly, I really don't think Michigan State scores more than 10. I'd be surprised if they do. I'd be surprised if they hit 10. But I think Michigan wins this game. On paper, this game should be 52-10. But since it's a rivalry, and since I think D'Antonio is a great coach, and I think it's been the best coach that Harbaugh's faced this season by a landslide, I'm going to go with 42-13.
Okay, that's respectable. And you got to remember that a lot of people are expecting Michigan to perform, but they have to perform with all the pressure on them. How are they going to perform when everything is, everyone's expecting them to roll Michigan State? And what happens if they face a little bit of adversity? It'll be nice to see. I'm hoping that it's a good football game. I'm hoping that it's a game that we all can watch until late into the fourth quarter. It goes back and forth with a lot of key plays, and a game that we can talk about for the ages. Because, if it's a blowout early, it's just another stinker, then it's just, Michigan's going to empty their bench, play a lot of young players, and yada, yada. They'll just move on. But if it's a nice, close game, it'll be interesting to see if Michigan's trailing by like 3 with 5 minutes left to see if they go down the field and who makes the key plays and what's going to happen. So all I'm hoping for is a solid performance for this.
I hope it's a good game. I've been bored all season.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to. It is kind of tough.
Wisconsin was cool, but everything else has been really boring.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see Spate play all 4 quarters.
And do you give?
I want to see play calling that's like actually, trying.
Exactly.
Not just runs up the middle.
Do you give any merit to the notion that, last year when Michigan State, had that significant play and the game was over, D'Antonio didn't come to midfield and shake Harbaugh's hand,
right?
And that Harbaugh's really pissed, and he's gonna.
And he said, "Where are the Wolverines at?"
Exactly, where are the Wolverines at, and things like that. And now the tables have turned, and Harbaugh's rolling into
karma.
Yeah, karma.
It's coming.
Rolling into East Lansing with a good team.
Karma. It's coming. It really is.
So you're seeing the reckoning. You're seeing a big-time performance.
Yeah, I mean, you don't understand. Michigan's fifth-year seniors, Michigan's team from last year especially, hates Michigan State. Hates D'Antonio for what they did. Those, when they got embarrassed in East Lansing those 2 times. They hate East Lansing for reasons that not just because they're taught to, but because the 2 times they went in there, they got rolled. Okay. Well, I'm going to implore you to improve your coverage of the game, too, later on and things like that, because I've always noticed that Michigan State reporters are a little bit better, too, than the Michigan reporters. That's fine.
I've always noticed that the Michigan coverage is...
Hey, it's easy.
It's a little
easy
bit
to
more...
report a 7-0 team.
Yeah, it's a little bit more with hyperbole, a lot more talk of, national titles. I think Michigan State...
Well, it's because they're 7-0 and they're number 2 in the country. Michigan's ranking is as low as Michigan State's win column.
That's true. Very true.
Which is rough.
Okay, we'll see if the coverage is fair and balanced this go around, because I don't want to see that if Michigan State wins that it was lucky, or that I want it to be, if Michigan State wins, that Michigan State went out there and earned it, and not Michigan.
Listen,
was let down.
If Michigan State wins, I will buy you your choice of steak anywhere.
Sounds good.
Anywhere.
Okay, you said it.
Texas State, Brazil, order it up.
Okay, you said it. Okay, now you've done it. You might have single-handedly cursed yourself, because I have a good luck streak with these type of things. Good luck to you.
I appreciate it.
If Michigan State wins, I turn off your phone. That's all I'm going to say. Turn off your phone. If Michigan State wins, when that timer hits 000, just turn off your phone, because it will not stop buzzing. You're going to think something went off with your phone.
We got 3 minutes left. I want to talk recruiting real quick before we go, and then we'll let Doc get his score prediction, because he hasn't given us a number yet.
Now I want you to finish the show. I'll give you the score prediction. I think my brain's telling me, and I'll stick with it, 31-10 Michigan. I'm hoping that it's a much closer game. Go green, go white. That's all I can say. I'll be hoping, trying to help the world, seeing clients, and I'm hoping by 3:30 that when I peek in periodically that it's, I get a chance to see them win the game. 31-10, though, is what my brain's telling me. My heart will always bleed green. Go green, go white. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it, too, because pretty much the only reason I have the show is because of the Doc. So it's about time it gets on here. We needed him for Michigan State week. So that was fun, because Doc is surprisingly confident, even though his score prediction didn't show that. But obviously, we got to talk recruiting before the show is over. I mean, that's why a lot of people come here. So I want to give 3 bold predictions. We don't have much time left, so I'm going to give 3 bold predictions on the class. I wouldn't say bold. I mean, I'm pretty confident in them for the most part. 3 bold predictions. I mean, I think that Michigan gets Chuck Filiaga, the 4-star tackle. Talked about it for a couple of weeks now. He was on the show a couple of weeks ago. I think they get him. I think they get the cousins. Ambry Thomas, 4-star DB from Detroit King. And this is relating to the Michigan State-Michigan battle right now, because Ambry Thomas has that, so is Jalen Kelly Powell, but I think Michigan gets both of them, the cousins. And then my 3rd bold prediction is this. And it's not crazy. It's not crazy. But I think it's good. I think it's good. I don't want to say it, though. I want to save it, because I want to save it for next week. I really do. Because Michigan can get Najee Harris, the 5-star Bama commit. They can get him. The shot is there. It's real. There's one way to do it. Michigan's got to win it all. They got to win the title. Michigan wins the title, they get Najee Harris. All right, that's my bold prediction. So thank you for tuning in for another week. I think this was episode 6. Yeah, episode 6. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. You can follow me on Twitter at Land of Justice. You can follow the podcast at Detroit Podcast. Find everything I do on land10.com/Michigan. Download the app. Just search Land of 10 in the little search bar. And I appreciate you guys for tuning in for another week. I am your host, Brandon Justice, on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and that was the Justice Report.
And you can't teach that.
Who's got it better than